The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by living beings. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. Thousands of seats filled the space, each one designed for a different species. Some were filled with water. Others were heated to temperatures that would kill most creatures. A few floated in the air for species that could not sit. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked down the central path toward the speaking platform. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind her, two assistants carried data tablets and tried not to look afraid. Every eye, sensor, and sensory organ in the chamber watched her. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for 300 years. In that time, they had learned many things. They learned that the galaxy was old and filled with ancient species who had conquered the stars when humans were still living in caves. They learned that these species had rules. They learned that new species were expected to follow those rules without question. Most importantly, they learned to be patient. High Arbiter Kethvorin sat at the center of the ruling platform. He was a Mithrani, a species that looked like giant insects standing on 4 legs. His body was covered in hard plates that shone like polished metal. His 4 arms ended in sharp claws that clicked together when he was annoyed. Right now, they were clicking very fast. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said. His voice came through translation devices that hung throughout the chamber. "You have been summoned to hear the Council's judgment." Elena bowed her head slightly. "I am here to listen, High Arbiter." Kethvorin picked up a glowing tablet. "The Council has reviewed the territorial dispute between the Human Confederation and the Dominion of Vurath. We have examined historical records, settlement claims, and resource surveys. Our decision is final." The Vurath ambassador sat in a tank of green liquid on the other side of the chamber. The Vurath were soft creatures with many tentacles and large, intelligent eyes. They had been council members for 6,000 years. Humans had been members for 300. "The 3 human colonies in the Tau Ceti system are to be surrendered to the Dominion of Vurath," Kethvorin announced. "The humans will have 90 cycles to remove all personnel and equipment. Any human remaining after this period will become property of the Vurath Dominion." A murmur ran through the chamber. Property. The word hung in the air like poison. Several species still practiced slavery, and the Council had never forbidden it. It was considered a local matter. Elena's face showed nothing. Her assistants behind her had gone pale, but she remained calm. "High Arbiter," she said, "the Tau Ceti colonies contain 12 billion human beings. We have lived there for 200 years. We have built cities, farms, and families. You are asking us to abandon our homes." "We are not asking," Kethvorin replied. "We are telling the Council has ruled." The Vurath ambassador's tentacles curled with pleasure. His species had wanted those worlds for centuries. The humans had simply arrived first, but that meant nothing to the Council. Older species had priority. This was the way things had always worked. "And if we refuse?" Elena asked. The chamber fell completely silent. Several translators glitched, unable to process the question. No species had refused a council ruling in 8,000 years. The last to try had been the Korthan, a proud warrior race who believed their military strength could protect them. The Korthan homeworld was now a dead rock, preserved as a warning to others. Kethvorin's claws stopped clicking. His compound eyes focused on the small human woman standing before him. Was this a joke? Was she confused? "Ambassador," he said slowly, as if speaking to a child, "perhaps you do not understand. The Council's authority is absolute. Our fleets number in the hundreds of thousands. We have weapons that can crack planets like eggs. Every major species in this chamber has agreed to enforce our decisions." "I understand perfectly," Elena said. "I am simply asking what happens if we refuse." The Vurath ambassador made a wet laughing sound. "Then you will be taught obedience as all species have been taught. Your worlds will burn. Your people will be scattered. Your name will become a story we tell children to frighten them." Other representatives joined in the laughter. The sounds filled the chamber, clicks and whistles and rumbles and hisses, all of them expressing the same thing: amusement at the foolish humans who did not understand their place. Elena waited for the laughter to stop. It took a long time. "I see," she said finally. "Then I must inform the Council that the Human Confederation rejects this ruling. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not abandon our people. We will not bend." The laughter died instantly. "Ambassador," Kethvorin said, his voice now carrying an edge of warning, "you cannot be serious. Your species is young. Your technology is limited. Your military is small. You have no allies among the elder races. What you are suggesting is suicide." Elena picked up the ruling tablet from where it had been placed before her. She looked at it for a moment, then set it down again. "The Human Confederation has heard the Council's words. We have a response." She turned to face the entire chamber, her small figure somehow commanding attention from thousands of beings. "For 300 years humanity has bowed. We have accepted insults. We have given up territories. We have watched our people be treated as lesser beings. We did this because we believed in peace. We believed that patience would earn us respect." She paused, and her calm expression finally changed. A small smile appeared on her face, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "We were wrong. We understand now that the Council does not respect patience. It does not reward obedience. It only understands one thing." "And what is that?" Kethvorin demanded. Elena turned and walked toward the exit. Her assistants hurried after her, confusion on their faces. At the great doors, she stopped and looked back one final time. "You will find out soon enough," she said. 90 cycles, you said. I suggest you use them to prepare." The doors closed behind her. The council representatives looked at each other in confusion. Some laughed again, but the sound was uncertain now. Others began talking in worried voices. The Verith ambassador's tentacles had stopped curling with pleasure. High Arbiter Kethvorin sat very still on his throne. In his 800 years of life, he had seen many species threaten the council. All of them had been crushed. This would be no different. And yet something about the human woman's smile bothered him. It was not the smile of someone who was bluffing. It was not the smile of someone who was afraid. It was the smile of someone who knew something he did not. He pushed the thought away. Humans were young and foolish. They would learn as all species learned. The council moved on to other business, already forgetting the small woman and her empty threats. This was a mistake. Deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa, in a bunker that did not exist on any map, the leaders of humanity gathered. The room was small and cold. There were no windows, no decorations, nothing that suggested comfort. This was a room built for war. Admiral Marcus Chen stood at the head of the table. He was a tall man with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much death. Around him sat 12 other officers, each one commanding a different branch of humanity's hidden military. They had waited for this moment for 300 years. "The Council has given us 90 days, Chen said. They expect us to surrender or prepare a small defense force that they can easily destroy. They are wrong on both counts." He pressed a button, and the wall behind him lit up with words that glowed blood red. Directive 0, Total War Doctrine. "Most of you know what this means," Chen continued. "For those who do not, I will explain. When humanity first reached the stars, we discovered that the galaxy was controlled by ancient species who saw us as animals. We had two choices. We could fight them immediately and be destroyed, or we could wait, learn, and prepare." General Sarah Okonkwo, commander of ground forces, nodded slowly. She had been training soldiers for this day for 40 years. "We chose to wait." "Yes," Chen said. "We accepted every insult. We gave up territories when demanded. We let them believe we were weak and obedient, and all the while we were building. He changed the display. Now it showed maps of human space, but these maps were different from any the Council had seen. Hidden bases appeared in asteroid belts. Secret shipyards emerged in the empty spaces between stars. Weapons research facilities showed up on moons that had been declared uninhabitable. The Council species have fought wars for thousands of years, Chen explained. But their wars are not like ours. They fight with rules. They declare war, they have battles, they negotiate, they sign treaties. They do not fight to destroy. They fight to establish dominance. He looked around the table, meeting each officer's eyes. Humanity does not fight that way. We never have. When we fight to win. We fight until the enemy cannot fight anymore. We burn their cities, destroy their factories, kill their soldiers, and break their will to continue. This is what they do not understand. This is what they have forgotten how to do. Admiral Wei Ling, commander of the Ghost Fleet that had been hiding in deep space for a century, spoke up. Our ships are ready. 300 capital vessels, 2,000 support craft, all equipped with weapons the Council has never seen. They have been waiting in the dark for 100 years. General Okonkwo added, ground forces are prepared for full mobilization. Every human world has been quietly training militia units for generations. Within 1 week of the order, we can have 50 million soldiers ready to fight. Director Pavel Volkov, head of weapons research, pulled up his own display. Project Hammer is complete. Project Silence is complete. Project Extinction is at 90% and will be ready within 30 days. He paused. I should note that Project Extinction is a planet killer. Once used, it cannot be undone. Chen nodded. We will use it only if necessary, but we will use it if necessary. That is the difference between us and them. They cannot imagine destroying a world. We can. The officers were silent for a moment. What they were planning was not just a war. It was the end of everything the galaxy had known for 8,000 years. There is something else, Chen said. Something the Council does not know. We have been in contact with other species, the ones they call protected clients, the ones they keep as servants and slaves. These species have been waiting too, waiting for someone to show them that the Council can be beaten. He brought up a list of names. Species that had been conquered thousands of years ago. Species that had been forced to give up their technology, their culture, their freedom. Species that hated the Council with a burning passion but had never had the chance to fight back. When we strike, they will rise. The Council will not face one enemy. They will face dozens. Their empire will burn from the inside and the outside at the same time. General Okonkwo leaned forward. What about the civilian population? 12 billion people in Tau Ceti alone. The Council will target them. Every civilian has been trained in basic combat and survival, Chen replied. Every city has been built with defense in mind. Every factory can be converted to weapons production within days. There are no civilians in total war. There are only soldiers who have not yet been called to fight. He turned off the display. The room fell into shadow. I will not lie to you. Many of us will die, perhaps most of us. This will not be a quick victory. It will be years of blood and fire and sacrifice. But our children will be free. Our grandchildren will never bow to alien masters. That is what we are fighting for. He looked at each officer one more time. The Council expects us to send a message of surrender. Instead, we will send a different message. In exactly 90 days, when their occupation fleet arrives at Tau Ceti, they will find out what happens when you push humanity too far. Chen stood straight and raised his hand in salute. Directive 0 is now active. Total war begins. The officers stood as one and returned the salute. No more words were needed. They had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. Their parents had prepared. Their grandparents had prepared. 300 years of humiliation was about to end. On 97 human worlds, encrypted messages began to arrive. Soldiers who had been living as farmers put down their tools and picked up weapons. Scientists who had been pretending to study medicine opened secret laboratories full of terrible machines. Ship captains who had been hauling cargo changed course toward hidden supply depots. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. In her cabin aboard the diplomatic shuttle, Ambassador Elena Vasquez watched the stars pass by. Her smile had not faded since she left the council chamber. She thought about High Arbiter Kethvorin and his clicking claws and his absolute certainty that humanity would obey. He would learn, they would all learn. Humanity had been patient for 300 years. That patience was over now. What came next would be something the galaxy had never seen before. Not a war of territory, not a war of resources, not a war of politics. A war of survival, a war without rules, a war without mercy. Total war. The stars continued to pass by, cold and uncaring. They had seen empires rise and fall for billions of years. Soon they would see another one fall. And something new would rise in its place. The Verith occupation fleet arrived at Tau Ceti exactly on schedule. Admiral Thexel commanded 200 warships, each one a mountain of metal and weapons. His crew was experienced and confident. They had conquered 12 species in their history. The humans would be number 13. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Sensors immediately began scanning for the expected human defense force. They found nothing. Thexel's tentacles twitched with confusion. Where are their ships? There should be at least some resistance. His tactical officer checked the readings again. Nothing, Admiral. The orbital stations around the colonies are still active, but there are no warships. Perhaps they have truly surrendered. Thexel did not believe it. The human ambassador had seemed too confident. Still, perhaps she had been bluffing after all. Young species often did not understand the reality of their situation until it was too late. Move the fleet toward the primary colony, he ordered. Standard occupation formation. We will broadcast terms of surrender when we arrive. The Verith fleet began moving inward. They were halfway to the first planet when the gas giant on their left side began to glow. Thexel watched in horror as 300 human warships emerged from behind the giant planet. They had been hiding in the radiation, invisible to sensors. But that was impossible. No ship could survive in that environment for more than a few hours. The humans had been waiting for 90 days. All ships battle formation, Thexel screamed, but it was too late. The human ships were already firing. The first wave of missiles was different from anything the Verith had seen before. They moved too fast, changed direction too sharply, and there were too many of them. Point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but for every missile destroyed, 10 more took its place. The Verith flagship shook as the first impacts hit. Thexel was thrown from his command chair. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. "Damage report," he shouted. "Forward shields are gone. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 12. Weapons systems are offline. Admiral, those missiles went through our shields like they were not there." Thexel pulled himself back to his feet. This was not possible. Verith shields were the strongest in the Council. They had been tested against every known weapon type. How did they do this? Nobody answered. Outside the viewport, Verith ships were dying. They exploded one after another, torn apart by weapons that should not exist. Some tried to run, but the human ships were faster. Some tried to surrender, broadcasting on all frequencies that they gave up. The human ships did not stop firing. In 17 minutes, the occupation fleet ceased to exist. 200 ships and 40,000 Verith soldiers gone. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed. Admiral Thexel was in a life pod when the human cruiser picked him up. He expected to be taken prisoner, questioned, perhaps exchanged for valuable information later. This was how wars worked. Instead, the humans took him to the bridge of their ship. Admiral Chen was waiting. "You wanted our worlds," Chen said calmly. "You wanted to make our people into slaves. Tell me, Admiral, did you really think we would allow that?" Thexul's tentacles trembled. "The Council will destroy you for this. You cannot fight the entire galaxy." Chen smiled. It was the same smile Elena Vasquez had worn in the Council chamber. "Watch us." He turned to his officers. "Record a message. Broadcast it to the Council on all frequencies. Let them see what remains of the occupation fleet. Let them see their admiral as our prisoner. And let them hear these words: Tau Ceti stands. Advance at your peril." The message reached the Council 3 days later. The reaction was immediate and furious. High Arbiter Kethforin called an emergency session. Species that had not attended Council meetings in centuries came to witness this moment. The chamber was packed with beings who could not believe what they had seen. "This is an act of war against the entire galactic community," Kethforin announced. "The humans have shown themselves to be savages, barbarians who do not understand the rules of civilized conflict. They must be destroyed completely." The Council voted to assemble the largest fleet in 3,000 years. 20,000 warships from 12 species would converge on human space. They would attack from 4 directions at once. No species could survive such an assault. The fleet gathered at the edge of human territory. It was a sight that had broken the will of countless species before. 20,000 points of light, each one a weapon of terrible destruction. The commanders were confident. They had overwhelming force. The humans had been lucky once. They would not be lucky again. They were wrong. The human military had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Hidden bases launched their weapons. Secret ships emerged from hiding places that had been built decades before, and on every human world the population mobilized. Factories that had been making farming equipment began producing missiles. Schools became military training centers. Hospitals prepared for mass casualties. Every human being, from children to the elderly, was given a role to play. The Council fleet attacked human space from 4 directions. They expected to crush the human military and occupy their worlds within weeks. Instead, they entered a nightmare. Human ships did not form defensive lines. They attacked in small groups, hitting weak points and retreating before the Council forces could respond. They targeted supply ships, leaving the warfleets without ammunition and fuel. They attacked communication relays, leaving commanders unable to coordinate. Worse, the humans fought in ways the Council had never seen. When a human ship was too damaged to fight, it did not surrender. It rammed the nearest enemy vessel, destroying both. When human soldiers were surrounded, they detonated explosives, taking enemy troops with them. And on the occupied worlds, civilians turned into guerrilla fighters. They ambushed patrols. They sabotaged equipment. They made every city into a death trap. General Okonkwo commanded the ground defense of New Beijing, the largest human colony in the Tau Ceti system. When Council forces landed, they expected to face a frightened population ready to surrender. Instead, they found a city that fought back. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a kill zone. For every block the Council troops advanced, they paid in blood. Okonkwo watched from her command center as the enemy pushed deeper into the city. They were paying a terrible price, but they were winning. They had more soldiers, more weapons, more everything. She gave the order she had hoped she would never have to give. Fall back to secondary positions. Activate the collapse protocol. Throughout the city, hidden explosives detonated. Buildings fell, blocking streets and crushing enemy troops. Tunnels opened, allowing civilians to escape to underground shelters, and then the real defense began. Fighting from the rubble, human soldiers stopped the Council advance completely. What the enemy had expected to take in days turned into weeks, then months. The Council had started this war expecting a quick victory. 6 months later, they had lost 40% of their fleet. Human space remained unconquered, and something else was happening. On worlds far from human territory, other species were watching. Species that had been Council servants for thousands of years. Species that had given up hope long ago. They saw humans say no to the Council. They saw humans fight back. They saw humans survive. And they began to wonder, if the humans could do it, why not us? The fire was spreading. 1 year into the war, the galaxy was burning. High Arbiter Kethvorin stood in his private chambers, staring at maps that showed nothing but disaster. The war against humanity should have been over in months. Instead, it had become something the Council had not seen in 8,000 years, a real fight. Human fleets had pushed beyond their original borders. They had captured 17 Council systems. They had destroyed or captured thousands of warships. And worst of all, they had freed the protected client species. The Korthan were no longer a dead race. Millions of them had survived in hidden colonies, waiting for 3,000 years for a chance at revenge. When human forces reached their territory, they rose up. Their hatred for the Council burned hotter than any star. The Melvari, a species of brilliant engineers who had been forced to work for the Council, turned their skills against their masters. They built weapons for the humans. They sabotaged Council ships. They taught other enslaved species how to fight back. The Venkai, peaceful philosophers who had been conquered 5,000 years ago, became spies and assassins. They moved through Council society, gathering information and eliminating key leaders. 12 species had now joined humanity's war. 20 more were considering it. The Council's empire, which had seemed unbreakable for thousands of years, was cracking. Kethvorin's claws clicked in frustration. His advisors had told him this was impossible. The humans were too young, too weak, too few. The Council had crushed hundreds of rebellions over the millennia. This one should have been no different. But it was different. The humans did not fight like any species the Council had faced before. They did not try to capture territory and hold it. They attacked everywhere at once, destroying infrastructure and retreating. They targeted food production, leaving Council worlds starving. They attacked communication networks, leaving commanders isolated. And they never stopped. No matter how many ships the Council destroyed, more appeared. No matter how many soldiers died, more took their place. It was as if the entire human species had become a weapon. General Okonkwo had become a legend among the liberated species. She had held New Beijing for 4 months against overwhelming odds. When the city finally became indefensible, she led the survivors through underground tunnels to escape. Then she came back with a larger army and took the planet again. Admiral Chen had destroyed 3 Council fleets, each one larger than the last. His tactics were studied by military commanders throughout the galaxy. Some tried to copy them. None succeeded. The humans had been planning this war for 300 years. They were always 3 steps ahead. Ambassador Vasquez had become something even more dangerous, a symbol. She traveled from world to world, meeting with oppressed species, telling them that they did not have to accept Council rule. Her words started rebellions. Her presence gave hope to beings who had forgotten what hope felt like. The Council tried to kill her 17 times. She survived every attempt. 2 years into the war, the Council controlled less territory than it had held at the beginning. Entire regions had broken away. Trade routes had collapsed. Species that had been loyal Council members for thousands of years were now refusing to contribute ships or soldiers. Kethvorin called for a final stand. All remaining loyal forces would gather at Threshold Station, the ancient center of galactic governance. It had been built 10,000 years ago, when the first species achieved faster-than-light travel. It was the heart of Council power, the symbol of their authority. If Threshold fell, the Council would fall with it. 3,000 warships gathered around the station. They represented the last strength of 12 species who still believed in council rule. Their commanders knew this was the end. Either they would destroy the human threat here, or they would watch their civilization crumble. The human fleet arrived 3 days later. Admiral Chen commanded from his flagship, the Earth's Vengeance. Behind him were 2,000 human warships and another 1,000 from allied species. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Chen looked at the enemy formation on his display. Threshold Station floated at the center, a massive structure that had watched over the galaxy for 10,000 years. Around it, the Council fleet waited in perfect defensive positions. "All ships," Chen said, his voice calm and steady. "This is the moment we have been preparing for. 300 years of patience, 300 years of planning. It all comes down to this." He paused, thinking about all the humans who had sacrificed their pride, their freedom, their lives to make this moment possible. "Today we end the Council's tyranny forever. No more bowing, no more surrender, no more accepting our place as lesser beings. Today we take our place among the stars as equals." The fleet began to move. The Battle of Threshold lasted 3 days. It was the largest and bloodiest space battle in galactic history. Both sides fought with everything they had. Ships exploded, filling space with debris and fire. Fighters dodged between massive warships, delivering deadly strikes. Boarding parties fought hand-to-hand in corridors filled with smoke and death. On the second day, the Corthan ships broke through the Council defensive line. They headed straight for the stations belonging to the Vurath, the species that had helped destroy their homeworld 3,000 years ago. The Corthan did not take prisoners. On the third day, the Council flagship was destroyed. The fleet began to fall apart as commanders died and communications failed. Ships tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to run. Admiral Chen personally led the assault on Threshold Station. Human Marines fought their way through corridors that had never known violence. They passed through chambers where species had debated and negotiated for thousands of years. Now those chambers were filled with the sounds of battle. Chen found High Arbiter Kethforin in the central command room. The ancient being was wounded, his metal-like plates cracked and leaking fluid. Around him lay the bodies of his guards. Kethforin looked up at the human, with compound eyes that could barely focus. "You have destroyed everything," he said, his voice weak. 8,000 years of peace, 8,000 years of order. For what? What will you build in its place? Chen knelt beside him. Despite everything, he felt a strange moment of pity for this creature. Kethforin truly believed that the Council had been good. He truly believed that controlling other species was necessary for peace. "Your peace was built on slavery," Chen said quietly. "Your order was maintained through fear. You did not unite the galaxy. You conquered it and called the conquest unity." He stood and looked around at the ancient room, at the symbols of power that decorated the walls. "What we build will be different. It will be messy. It will be difficult. Species will argue and fight and disagree, but they will do it as equals. They will do it as free beings." Kethforin's eyes dimmed. "You are fools. Without the Council, the galaxy will tear itself apart." "Maybe," Chen admitted, "but it will be their choice, and that is worth more than 1,000 years of forced peace." The High Arbiter died a few minutes later. With him died the Council that had ruled the galaxy for 8,000 years. Outside Threshold Station, the last Council ships were surrendering. The war was not over. There would be months of cleanup, years of rebuilding, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had won. 5 years after the fall of Threshold Station, a new gathering took place in the rebuilt Assembly Hall. This time, there was no high seat for a single ruler. Instead, representatives from 60 species sat in a great circle, each one equal to the others. Elena Vasquez, now president of the Human Confederation, walked to the center of the circle. She was older now, her gray hair turned white. The years of war and rebuilding had left marks on her face, but her eyes still held that same quiet strength that had faced down the council 5 years before. "Welcome," she said, "to the first full session of the Galactic Assembly." The chamber was silent as she spoke. Representatives from species that had hated each other for thousands of years sat side by side. Former council masters sat next to species they had once enslaved. It was awkward, uncomfortable, and unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was also filled with hope. 5 years ago, Alina continued, humanity stood before this galaxy and refused to bow. We did not know if we would survive. We did not know if anyone would join us. All we knew was that we would rather die fighting than live as slaves. She looked around the circle, meeting the eyes of beings who had once been enemies, beings who had once been victims, beings who were now trying to become partners. Many of us died in the war that followed, human and alien alike. We lost worlds, families, friends. The cost was terrible. Her voice caught for a moment. My own son died defending New Beijing. I think about him every day. General Okonkwo, now retired, sat in the human section. She nodded slowly. She had lost more soldiers than she could count. Every name was written in her memory, a weight she would carry until she died. "But we are not here to mourn the past," Alina said, her voice growing stronger. "We are here to build the future, and the future we are building is something new." She gestured to the empty space above the assembly, where holograms showed the new map of galactic civilization. Under the old council, species were ranked. Some were masters, some were servants, some were considered animals not worthy of any rights at all. This is over now. The hologram changed, showing the charter of the new galactic assembly. Every species represented here has equal voice. Every species has the right to govern their own worlds. Every species has the right to say no. A murmur ran through the assembly. For many of the former protected client species, these words were still hard to believe. For thousands of years, they had been told they were not capable of governing themselves. They had been told that they needed the council to protect them from their own weaknesses. Now they were being told they were equals. A young Verith diplomat rose from his seat. His name was Kethul, and he was the great-grandson of Admiral Thexul, who had died in the Battle of Threshold. His people had suffered greatly in the war. Their fleet was gone, their pride shattered, their population reduced by half. "President Vasquez," he said, his tentacles expressing uncertainty, "my people were your enemies. We tried to take your worlds. We tried to enslave your people. Why do you offer us a place in this assembly? Why do you not treat us as we treated you?" Alina looked at the young Verith for a long moment. It would be easy to hate his species. They had started the war. They had caused so much suffering. But hatred would not build a better galaxy. "Because we did not fight to become what we hated," she said. "We fought to be free, and freedom means nothing if we deny it to others, even those who once denied it to us." She walked toward the Verith section, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. "Your people made terrible choices. So did many others in this room. But the children of those who made those choices should not be punished for the sins of their parents. What matters now is what we choose to become." Kethul's tentacles trembled. "We are trying to understand. It is not easy. For 6,000 years, my people believed we were superior. That belief was the foundation of our culture. Now we must rebuild that culture from nothing." Alina stopped in front of him and extended her hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Then we will help you rebuild, not as masters and servants, not as conquerors and conquered, but as neighbors who are learning to live together." Kethul hesitated for a long moment. Then slowly he extended a tentacle and touched her hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. It meant that change was possible. The assembly continued for several more hours. There were arguments and disagreements. Some species still distrusted others. Some wounds were too fresh to heal. But at the end of the day, 60 species voted to ratify the Assembly Charter. More would join in the months and years to come. That evening, Alina stood on a balcony overlooking the rebuilt city of Threshold. Admiral Chen joined her, moving slowly. The war had aged him badly, and his health was failing. "We did it," he said quietly. 300 years of planning, 3 years of war, and we actually did it. Alina nodded, but her expression was thoughtful. "We started it. The hard part is what comes next." "What do you mean?" She gestured at the city below them. It was a mix of architecture from dozens of species, rebuilt after the battle that had destroyed much of the original station. Beings of all kinds walked the streets, some friendly, some suspicious, all of them trying to figure out how to share space with each other. The council system was terrible, but it was stable. Everyone knew their place. Everyone knew the rules. What we've built is better, but it's also harder. Freedom is hard. Equality is hard. We're asking species to unlearn thousands of years of thinking. Chen smiled despite his weariness. "You sound worried." "I'm realistic," Alina replied. "There will be conflicts. Species will fight over territories and resources and old grudges. Some might even try to recreate the council under a different name. But—" She turned to look at him, and for a moment she looked like the young ambassador who had first stood before the council chamber, small but unbreakable. "But it will be their choice. Every species, every world, every being will have the right to choose their own path. That's worth fighting for. That's worth dying for. That's worth spending 300 years pretending to be weak for." Chen laughed, which turned into a cough. "You know, I used to wonder if we were crazy, hiding our strength for so long, accepting all those insults. I sometimes thought we should have fought earlier." "If we had fought earlier, we would have lost," Alina said. "We weren't strong enough. We didn't have enough allies. We didn't understand our enemies well enough. 300 years of patience bought us victory. And now—" Alina looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, on thousands of worlds, beings were waking up to their first day of true freedom. Children were being born who would never know what it was like to bow to a master. History was being written that would remember this moment for millions of years. Now we teach the galaxy what we learned on Earth a long time ago, that all beings are created equal, that no one has the right to rule another without their consent, that freedom is not given by the powerful to the weak, but taken by those who refuse to accept anything less. She smiled, and this time it was not the hard smile of war, but the warm smile of hope. The council expected obedience. They thought we would bow, like every other species had bowed before us. They thought we would accept our place as lesser beings. She turned back to face the city, where the lights of 100 different species were beginning to glow in the evening darkness. They were wrong, and their mistake changed the galaxy forever. Somewhere in the distance, music began to play. Different species, different instruments, different traditions, all trying to create something beautiful together. It was not perfect. Sometimes the notes clashed. Sometimes the rhythms fought against each other. But it was theirs, all of theirs, and that made it more precious than anything the old council had ever built. The future was uncertain, complicated, and difficult, but for the first time in 8,000 years it was free. And that was enough.